Tom.
Jack.
Tom, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, yeah.
Inquisitive?
Yeah, I'm feeling well inquisitive.
How's your brain feeling? Big?
My mate, huge. It's pouring out my ears.
Thinking cap is on?
Steadied.
Ooh,
Just like that.
That was fun. Audio listeners won't get it, but we had a laugh.
Steadied my imaginary
You put
cap.
a fake cap on, yeah.
Is your thinking cap on?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for a big chat. This is going to be probably, if you like the deep chats, this is probably going to be the deepest episode we ever do, hopefully.
You're genuinely, over the next hour, viewer, wherever you are, on the toilet, in a car, or those are the two options.
Or Brazil.
Brazil, your mind is going to be expanding. It's going to be mental.
Why is that, Tom?
Because we have on the legendary, the Mr. Smarts himself, Alex O'Connor.
Shut up, I'm talking.
Shut up! I'm talking. I'm talking. I'm talking. Oh, shut up! Shut up!
There you go.
How was that?
That was
nice. There you go.
Nailed. Absolutely
I
nailed.
suppose I should have watched people do that before I gave that a go, but
I think you did wonderful.
we're in
It's
just
fine.
now.
We gave you the privilege, which we don't do many people, of actually explaining that to you before the
Beforehand.
episode, rather than after the cameras are rolling.
Sounds great. Yeah,
a lot
that's-
of people have heard us just explain that to the guests, and it's really awkward. So
How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Yeah, all right, getting the train down?
Very well. Just about. I'm sorry I'm late, but having
it's
having,
all right.
having a wonderful time here.
They didn't know.
Here in
You didn't
Brighton.
have to.
You didn't
now
have to
they
say
know.
that. Now
You
they
know?
know.
Yeah, I know, but it makes me look like a bad person. But one must be honest if we're going to be ethically consistent.
Oh, we're already starting. It's already kicking
Yeah.
off.
How honest though? Because when does honesty become rude?
You know, that is an interesting question, actually, and what quite counts as honesty. Like, I sort of really don't like lying ever, but you
neither.
find yourself sort of playing tricks against yourself, saying, like, as long as you technically say something that's true, it doesn't really matter. Like, I could have said to you, you know, like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late, and then I could have just said something like, oh, like, traffic was really bad. And it might be true that traffic was really bad, but that might not be like why I'm late. So I haven't told you a lie.
You did,
but
you
I
did
kind of lied by.
truthfully.
You said.
Just tell us
Yeah.
that you just were late to the train.
But the lying seems to be about the intention. You know, it seems to be about like, what's the message you're trying to get across? Because no one ever means what they say. Like when you say words, you very rarely mean the exact word you say.
Should we introduce you? Right, Alex. Let's just
I don't know.
let's
We've
just
gotten
put a
there
pause
so
on that.
quickly.
Bloody hell.
Right, Alex, do you want to introduce yourself to the people? I feel like you could do it more aptly than I ever
I can
could.
give it a go. I'm a podcaster, YouTuber. I talk about philosophy and religion and religious history. Got a degree in theology, and that's about it, really. I just talk about philosophy all the time.
Yeah, you
Live
go
and
by
breathe it.
Cosmic Skeptic.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Got notes.
my username handle. It used to. You guys will know. Like when you're on YouTube, you sort of come up with a sort of funky name, and then things start going
Some
well,
of us do.
and you start getting invited to very serious things, and you have to sort of go like, "Yeah, my name's
Guess I'm done with that.
TommyInnit or whatever."
Yeah,
and it's
serious
like,
name,
you know, in
TommyInnit.
some contexts, it's a little bit sort of tricky. So I decided
Yeah.
a little while ago to sort of get rid of the Cosmic Skeptic thing. It's still my handle because it's
Sure.
got a sort of place in my heart. But these days,
I was Channel Nutpig, Alex.
yeah, really.
Oh yeah.
And then you went over to TommyInnit, which was much more professional.
TommyInnit. And
Yeah.
now I'm, toying with Tom Simons, but I just can't let go of the innit.
It's the classic thing, isn't it? It in it where like you sort of have a YouTube name, and at some point you think, should I just become my naked self? I know everyone I know has gone through this at some point. Other podcasters and YouTubers and the likes, they're always considering using the real name. I mean, I think it was a great move, but that's because I'm trying to take myself, a bit seriously in a very sort of boring way.
His real name is Jack Manifold.
Yeah, that's true. It's not a stage name.
So
Some
there you
people
go.
ask.
And how's that going for you?
It's been great.
Yeah.
I find people, it's a very interesting sort of thing, because I think a lot of people are very concerned about privacy, and that's the reason they have these sort of like handles.
Yes.
But what I found was if you just out the gate present your information to people, they naturally then like less curious.
Yeah. I think
So like
that's
out of
true.
all the people I know have had privacy issues, I've had the least, because people they feel like they already know what they need to know, so they don't dig into me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jack, people want to know what's behind closed doors. I'm trying to match the level that
Yeah.
we're at today. I just wanted to be.
That was your little
Just wanted to,
philosophical. Go on,
I wanna-
expand on it.
People want what they can't have.
Yes.
That's true. Why is that?
They want your information. They want and that's why if you use coupon code expressvpn.com.
All right, okay.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just
if
joking, I'm
only.
just joking.
Right, Alex, what was your worst moment of the week? We ask every guest this. It's your worst moment.
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and
Good.
In the bathroom 10 minutes ago.
I was, yeah, and that might have been my worst moment of the week just then. But to not get too meta, I was in Oxford recently. My girlfriend has just started a PhD there, and in Oxford they do this matriculation ceremony where you dress up in
What's
this.
matriculation?
It's where you like join the university. It's like the official ceremony by
Sure,
which you become
okay.
a member, right? And they dress up in like the academic gowns
Yeah.
and stuff, and they all like there's like thousands of students all shuffling into this 700 seater theatre in and out, right? And I was like running around like, I want to get a picture, you know, I thought this would be really good. And everyone matriculates on the same day. So I went to Oxford and I graduated in 2021. So I've been gone for years and I was back. And some people recognized me from YouTube, right?
Sure.
And so I'm trying to get like a picture, but like there's the theatre's like gated off and whatnot. So I find this fence where I can like climb up on the wall up against the gate. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be able to get like a really nice picture. But obviously there are so many students going in and out. I don't know when the right moment's going to be. So people kept walking past, and bear in mind that the majority of the people who are matriculating are like undergraduates. They're like 18-year-olds, and they're walking past and they're like, who's
Alex, why are you
who's that guy like with his camera?
Alex O'Connor's in banging pictures
and
of
then it's like,
18-year-olds.
isn't that guy off YouTube? And so I think, you know, like thinking that I'd come back to as if I do this like every year since I graduated. I just sort of come back and climb the fence and stuff. It did feel a little bit awkward, but I had to power
Don't worry,
through.
guys, my girlfriend's in there.
Yeah, that kind of makes it sound worse when people don't know that the postgraduates are matriculating on the same day. So that might be the worst.
I think
That's a bad moment.
No YouTuber's safe, man.
No,
we thought it was just in the Minecraft.
Yeah, usually it's just the Minecraft
but
sort of
no.
lot that get that reputation, but I guess it's everywhere.
Yeah, well, I'm holding the torch for you guys. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Right. Well, we have a lot of questions, but we wanted to start off with one that we kind of like to ask everyone. What's your early life like? What brings you to sort of study theology in Oxford? Like, how do you get there? Where's the intrigue?
It's a good question, and a long one which I'll try to abridge, in that I was raised a Roman Catholic and not super steadfastly. I was like an altar boy, you know, where they wear the gowns and they swing the incense and stuff. Sure. But like I couldn't have told you anything about religion or philosophy. I didn't know anything. And then you get to like teenage years and you start thinking this is all nonsense, and you read Richard Dawkins and The God Delusion. You think that's all a load of nonsense. And I got really interested in philosophy through those debates, through the sort of religion is false, that kind of stuff. And then I started this YouTube channel, and it was kind of the wrong way around. Like I was, 16, 17. I was making videos about all kinds of stuff. I used to make skateboarding videos and guitar tutorials and stuff. And one time I started talking about religion, and people like picked up on it and they liked it. So I made another one. And then you start getting asked these questions like, oh, but like, if you don't agree with this religion thing, then where do you get your morality from? And I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, okay, good question. I'll have a look at that and think about it. And so it was kind of the wrong way around. I started making the videos, and I was interested, and I had things to say that I'd learned from like Richard Dawkins or whatever, but I'd never like done a deep study. And so the YouTube channel started going well. And then I thought, this is great. I want to study this. So I then applied for university. And at Oxford, where I never thought I'd get in, people say this, but I really did not think I'd get in because my grades weren't very good. At AS level, I got like A, B. Oh no, well, the first time I got 3 U's and a D. I failed my exams, overslept one of them at 1 p.m. I overslept my A levels. And so I had to retake, and I got like ABC, and it was a really sort of audacious thing to do to apply to Oxford. But I think because of the YouTube channel, I could sort of put on my statement and be like, look, I promise I'm really, really into philosophy and stuff.
Wow, that's cool.
I think, I mean, you never know, but I think that might have had something to do with it, because they'll look at the grades and say, ABC, if you can get predicted the right grades, you meet the requirements if you get those grades. Yeah. But like, compared to other students who have this great academic record, but if I can say, look, academics have been patchy, but I promise you I've got a passion for this subject. Yeah. They might let me in. And that might be what did it. But they don't let you study philosophy on its own at Oxford. You can't do it.
So what did philosophy?
You have to do it with something. So it has to be philosophy, and they'll do philosophy and French, philosophy and maths, philosophy and physics, like so many options.
Literally anything, right?
And one of them is philosophy and theology, study of religion.
Okay, that's what.
And so I picked that because it was like, well, I'm interested in religion, and I'd rather do pure philosophy, but sure, I'll do theology if I have to do something. And I'm so glad that they made me do that, because now my interest in theology has sort of gone through the roof.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad of it.
Wow, that's fascinating. And have you, I've sort of noticed a minute ago, even when we asked just about like channel names, you really considered it and took it into like consideration. Have you always been quite a deep thinker, or did this evolve with age, or?
Well, I don't know, and I don't know. Being a deep thinker, I mean, it's like an implicit compliment. It's like someone
definitely
thinks deep, and that's nice of you to say. But I'm not sure if I think maybe I just spend more time with these questions than a lot of people do, and that's just a point of interest. It's like thinking is so celebrated because it's linked to intelligence and things like that people like. But if you're interested in anything, you'll just spend more time than other people doing it. And so I've just always been interested in it and spent a lot of time thinking about God's existence and the arguments and watching debates and stuff like that.
And what is it that interests you about it? Sort of, where does the passion
Originally,
come
it was
from?
the theatre of it, you know?
Yeah,
it was
really?
like these debates, these new atheists from like the mid-2000s, Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens, and these guys would give these incredible speeches, particularly Christopher Hitchens, a journalist who died in 2011, and he gave these like roaring speeches, and he spoke so eloquently. He was the greatest rhetorician in the past, 50 years at least. And it galvanizes you, it really perks you up. And I thought, gosh, I want to do that. And so and then I thought, I love the idea of debating, and then public speaking became really fun. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that. And I realized when my first ever public talk kind of went well, I was like, this is awesome. This is so much fun. And so it just so happened that the subject matter that brought me into that was philosophy and religion. And now I'm much less interested in the debating and the theatre, and much more interested in the philosophy and the theology. So it sort of came in, through the back door.
Yeah. Man, that's fascinating. Right, and we've...
Sorry, I just glanced at the first question.
Right.
God, we're kicking it off.
Right, I've taken in a lot of your stuff over this past, since we found out that we're having you on.
Awesome.
And spoke to a lot of our mates, and they've been fucking going, no fucking way.
You are really one of our most between our friends.
I'll be honest with you, mate. You're up there with Dan and Phil in terms of excitement for having on right now. It's you and Dan and Phil are rivaling. Okay, and given there's two of them and one of you,
great.
That's pretty fucking
exciting. Great to hear.
You're well smart, and we have a lot of chats on this podcast about big picture things.
We've started asking every guest this.
Every guest we've started asking this next question. The thing is, we talk about big picture things with what I can describe as only opinions. We have little to no facts. So we're really quite excited to have you on today to kind of iron out a lot of our thoughts. So we have a lot of big picture questions. Yeah. If that's all right with you.
Absolutely, yeah. Ready for anything.
Mr. O'Connor, is it Mr. O'Connor or Mr.
That's
Connor?
Right. O'Connor.
Didn't know if O was a middle name. Mr. O'Connor, what happens when we die?
Well, it's a great question, and it might be the most motivating question of human activity.
Okay.
Because we're like quite unique amongst other animals in that, all animals are going to die, all life dies, all objects, fall apart and cease to exist at some point. But most of them don't like know that that's going to happen, right? But we do. We know that we're going to die. Yeah. And so there's something sort of exclusively motivating about that for human beings. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about what's going to happen when we die. And one important question to ask is, well, where do you think you came from in the first place? Because these questions are related. Because if you're like a materialist atheist, you think that all that exists is just like atoms and stuff, and consciousness is just this sort of, this mystical emergent property that just happened to evolve, then you could think like, there was a point before which you were both born. Where were you before you were born? Where did you come from, right? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Are you like...
Thought you might have an answer.
No, I don't. I honestly don't.
Are you like attached to, wherever you might have been before you were born? Have you got any sentimentality about it? It sort of feels like it's a bit of a non-question. And some people, for some people, it's enough to console themselves to just say like I think it was, someone like Mark Twain, although he always gets attributed quotes that he didn't actually say, that says something like, look, I'm not worried about not existing. I did that for like billions of years and I got on just fine. Yeah. It wasn't a problem. And that's where I'm going to go back. So if you think that, human consciousness can kind of spring out of nowhere, after with some, biological cause, but the awareness, the consciousness just sort of appears at some point during the formation of this embryo, then presumably when that stuff goes away, the consciousness just disappears as well. And so as far as you're concerned, nothing.
But this is that bothers me.
Yeah.
Because it's one of my big fears is dying. I think, and I just don't, but my biggest fear is doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like I really don't want to be bored.
Well, you wouldn't be because you wouldn't be around to be bored. Like you wouldn't be aware that you're even
that's
bored.
Where I start getting
it's like
hazy.
you're not doing nothing. There is no you doing anything. It's like the difference between saying like,
But does that not freak you out?
Of course. Like, and this is just...
And how have you found comfort?
Well, there are a few ways. I mean, the first is to say, and this is only for a start.
And I'm aware you're not a therapist. I do apologize.
But we can give it a crack. I think this assumes. I've said like if you're a materialist atheist, because that's kind of the worst position on this. Is like if there
On
is
death, do you
just
think?
yeah, I mean,
I find that interesting. 'Cause I don't know if I agree.
as in, like, the least
which
the
one's
least
the
consoling.
materialist atheist?
The one where he was like, yeah, it's just stuff. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like for somebody who's scared of death at the very least, this seems to be probably the most anxiety-inducing position, because the fear is that you're literally just going to cease existing and you have no idea, like, what's the point in being here in the first place? It's all going to be forgotten, all of that kind of stuff. But don't think of it, if that were the case, don't think of it as you doing nothing. There is no you. It's like one of my favorite ways to imagine being blind. It's like when you think about what it would be like not to see, for example. You might close your eyes and you might think, oh, I'd see black. But that's you seeing nothing. But to be blind is to not see anything. It's not you seeing black or you seeing that. It's just nothing. Like, you know, people have sometimes asked, you know, what can you see out of your left elbow?
Yeah.
What can you see out of your elbow? That's what, like, nothing is, right? Like what, you know, as Aristotle said, I think, you know, what do rocks dream about?
Yeah.
Nothing. Sure. It's not some sort of field of quantum fluctuations or some space where your consciousness goes and just sits in utter darkness. It's just like, it's not even a thing. So if you're scared of death and you think that that's what death brings, what are you scared of? You know, there's a famous sort of formula for this from an ancient philosopher called Epicurus, who essentially says that, like, death, like, when you're scared of it, it's not with you, and when it's with you, there's no you.
There's
like
no
there's no point at which it is rational to think that there's no point at which death is bad for you. It's not bad for you now because it's not with you. It's not bad for you then because there's no you. And so there's no point in time at which something is bad for you. And if you want to say that something is bad, like death, it seems like if you want to say something is bad or good or whatever, there needs to be some point in time at which it is true that that thing is bad. If there's no point in time at which it can be truly said X is bad, then that just seems to imply that, you know, X isn't bad.
It's always fine.
There's no time when it's bad. So when is death bad?
I just don't want to stop being me.
Yeah, but I can understand that. But you know, your existential fears might be compounded when you consider what makes you the same person you'll be when you're 45, for example. It's actually very difficult to even know how to account for that person being you, right? Thank you. I mean, but it's worth thinking about. You know, you might die 1,000 deaths throughout your life. I mean, are you the same person you were when you were 6? Can you remember being 6? Do you share any of the atoms with your 6-year-old self?
Can I go into our next question?
Can I quickly revisit? Because I found it really interesting that you said that the sort of materialist atheist viewpoint was the most exciting.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting because, to me, at least, it seems that the sort of theist belief that there's something beyond that, could has the potential to be the scariest, right?
Actually, yeah, I think you're quite right. The very worst, I think, would be that there is an afterlife and that afterlife is somehow bad.
I'm not permitted to go to, permitted to go to a good one at least.
So if there's like some kind of hellfire, or even if it's just, some people are just scared of eternity anyway because they imagine that they'll get bored. They'll imagine it's going to be the same thing over and over again. I don't think anything like that exists. So you also asked how I console myself here. And for me, I've been thinking a lot recently about the mystery of consciousness, which is the awareness that goes alongside the material stuff. Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about it more in full later. But I'm so mystified by where consciousness comes from and what it is, and like what it's sort of made out of, and how we separate out our individual centers of consciousness, that I take quite a lot of consolation in thinking that, you know, there might be some sense in which my selfhood, my sense of unified conscious identity as an individualized self, will one day disperse. But the conscious stuff that makes me up might still be around somewhere. In the same way that if I take the Empire State Building, which is a really complex organization of material stuff, and I bulldozed it, the Empire State Building would no longer exist, but all the stuff that makes it up, all the important material that went into building it, would still be there. It's just not unified into the Empire State Building. And so I don't know what happens to my consciousness. When I die, it might be that the sort of consciousness that's currently focused into myself just sort of flitters off somewhere, you know? And I don't know where that goes, but it might not be the same thing as, like, you know, just lights out and nothing matters.
Sure. That's interesting.
Just what you were saying there about, I can't remember, but you said it a minute ago. You did say it. It was going to be a perfect segue, and then Jack said something.
Sorry, I had to.
Well, it was about personal identity through time, you being the same person that you were when you were 6.
Something about that. Do you think meaning is something that we discover or something we create? Like, do humans intrinsically try to find meaning in everything, or should we? And then I wrote, should we bother or just have a nice time?
Yeah. Well, maybe those two are the same thing. You know, having a nice time isn't always easy. Like, sometimes that takes some proactive effort. Meaning, the first question that needs to be asked is the unintentionally ironic question of what does meaning mean? Like, when you use the word meaning, what are you talking about, right? Some people, everybody has a general understanding of the kind of thing we're talking about. It's something like, like a reason to be, a reason to act, a reason to care about stuff. I think like meaning and purpose are synonyms essentially in the way people use them. Like, what's your purpose? And a purpose, literally speaking, is just a reason to act. What is your purpose in, writing a homework essay? That's to, get a good grade. That is literally the purpose of that action. The grand question of purpose of life is when you just keep asking that question over and over again. Like, why are you writing the paper? Well, to get a good grade. Well, why do you want a good grade? Well, because then I'll pass my exams. Why do you want to pass your exams? So I can get a good job. Why do you want a good job? So I can make money. Why do you want to make money? So I can provide for my family. Why do you want to provide for your family? Because I don't want them to suffer and die. And eventually you'll get to a question that seems a bit silly. Like, well, why don't you want your family to, suffer and die? And most people at some point find themselves just going, I just don't. That is just, it's just as true to me as that the sky is blue. I don't know why the sky is blue. I just know that it is, right? I know that, that suffering would be bad. And wherever that question bottoms out, I think is what your purpose is in life. The question for the philosopher is like, well, is that purpose justified? Are we all deluding ourselves? Does it actually matter? Oh, maybe we should all just suffer and die. Like, who cares? And that's when you really get into the weeds. But I think that in practice, people can discover what their current purpose is by just asking that question and taking it all the way and seeing where it ends. But if you're talking about like, true meaning, like, because in theory, somebody could say, oh, I don't care about my family, I don't care about suffering and all that kind of stuff. So they're motivated in a different way, and their purpose, practically speaking, might be totally different to yours. And so there's a separate question of like, are there some purposes which are like true or correct, and other purposes which are misguided or wrong? So if you can just create your own purpose, a lot of people say, I'm just gonna make up my own meaning in life. There's no God, there's no objective purpose, so I'm just going to make it up, right? Sure, and a lot of people are consoled by that, but that means if someone decides that their meaning in life is just counting the blades of grass in their garden, that's just what they decide is the meaning, that's just what they want to do with their lives. And another person decides to devote their life to donating money to Oxfam and fundraising for charity, that those two lives are equally meaningful. Because as long as each person feels like that's where they get their meaning from, then they've both got meaningful lives. But we kind of look at that and want to say something like, no, that second person's life is actually more meaningful. Even if they feel the same to each person, there's something that's actually more meaningful, which would imply that we believe that there's some correct source of meaning.
There's an intrinsic
that people
meaning
can have.
To people in
life. And then the
so.
question is, where does that come from? So in practice, I think people discover meaning. But I think that when it comes to trying to come up with what is like the true correct meaning for human existence, most of the time philosophers are essentially inventing, answers to that question. But yeah, you can keep asking that question over and over again. Why do you do this?
And do you have, of those philosophers' questions, do you find that you have one that aligns with what you think reigns truest?
I always struggle to answer questions about meaning because, like, I don't know. I sometimes, in my more pessimistic moments, I think that we're just sort of evolved apes who have these desires within us. It's like the reason you eat is because you're hungry. And I could say to you, like, the reason why you feel hunger is because it's an evolutionary advantage, because you'll die without food, and there might have been people who didn't care about their death, but they get wiped out. And it just so happens that the people who survive do care about death because that's why they survived. And hunger develops as an evolutionary tool to make us eat. And that could be like the real reason why you're feeling hungry. But you are still feeling hungry. So you still have hunger, even though I've explained to you, why you have it, and it's all essentially arbitrary. So I could say to you, the reason why you feel like you need to get out of bed in the morning and, care for your family and stuff, like, oh, it's all just evolution. Like, why do you care more for, say, your brother than your cousin? Why do you care more for a cousin than a stranger? Usually, all other things being equal. Why? Is it because there's some true morality of the universe that says that brothers are worth more than cousins? Or is it because you happen to share more genetics with your brother than your cousins? Could that have something to do with the way?
Absolutely.
So you could say, the reason why you feel these moral ideas and the purpose that you have in life is just evolution. It's just some arbitrary selection process. But you still feel it. It's still there. You're still hungry. You're still going to want to go and get food. So you still love your family. You still genuinely, and it's not like, it's not true that you love your family. Like you do. You can understand why you love your family, but that doesn't reduce that love to the explanation. It just explains why you have it. In the same way that explaining why you're hungry doesn't make you not hungry. Yeah, sure, it's a bit depressing now you know why you're hungry and it's all a bit arbitrary, but you're still genuinely hungry. And so if it is all essentially just arbitrary and meaningless, you still feel the meaning. And that's still actually sincere. It's like really something you're actually feeling. You do love people. You do want to get out of bed in the morning. And that is, literally speaking, I think what people's purposes are.
Yeah, just whatever drives them.
Yeah.
And have you personally found meaning?
On a practical level, yes, because, there are things which I care about. Like I care about, the well-being of myself and the people who I care about. But if you ask me, like, well, if you were being a philosopher and you said, but why should you care about those other people? I think I would have to just say, I just do. I don't know. So have I found meaning? I haven't found a satisfying answer that would convince a psychopath that they should care about other people.
Right, okay.
Like there's some moral truth of the universe that you must abide by. I find it very difficult to say that. But for myself, I just know that I do have particular sort of drives. But these two questions are related as well, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about consciousness recently, as I said, and this question about where we go after we die, and also is there like meaning? The idea that consciousness is more like foundational and ubiquitous.
I watched this video, I'm
all this
familiar
kind
with
of
this
stuff.
idea.
That kind of stuff plays into this too, because
I showed
know
you a
we
little
watched
bit
it,
of
but
this
just
one.
as well.
You're better explaining it than me, to be fair.
How do you think, Jack?
Yeah, probably. I sort of got sat down. We did. This is the one video I put on.
We
with
watched
you.
it. No,
watched
but
it
just
together.
to clue everyone in.
it gets a little bit. I'm not sure which video you're talking
The
about.
one where you
actually,
spoke a bit about panpsychism.
Yeah, so the consciousness is a great mystery that most people don't spend very much time thinking about at all. Like we think that we're interacting with a material world around us, right? There's a table here, there's a microphone in front of me, but every single thing that you interact with in the universe is through your experience. Right? You cannot step outside of your own experience. So when I say that like there's a microphone here, what I mean is that I have a conscious experience of like seeing a microphone. I'm having a visual experience. If I shut my eyes, it's not there anymore, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Well, okay, but I can touch it. But touch is also an experience. The hearing is an experience. There's no way that I can interact with this microphone directly. We like to think
You as the consciousness.
Yeah, me as like whatever's inside, the brain, the monkey controlling the sticks. There's no way for whatever's inside me to just sort of reach out and ascertain the real world. It has to be through sensors. So you can imagine like you're flying an airplane and you've got this dashboard in front of you and you've got all of these indicators, then there are sensors on the outside and the sensors are picking up the air pressure and the altitude and they're showing you on the inside, numbers on a dashboard, right? You have to interact with the outside world sort of through that dashboard, right? So what you're really interacting with is a dashboard. And the dashboard is sort of giving you information from the outside. Yeah. So similarly, there is stuff out there, but the way we interact with it is all through experience. So like this experience is like foundational to the way we move through the world. And it is a complete mystery to us, like why experience exists. I mean, it seems plausible that there could have just been things like tables and rocks. And even if life evolves, it could all just be sort of oyster brains or jellyfish.
I see what you're saying, like that sort of automatic sort of, life goes on because it sort of just does.
There's a concept introduced by a chap called Bob Kirk some decades ago called the philosophical zombie. And he imagines somebody who just has a brain just like you and I, and their brain is firing neurons just the same way. And, you know, when there's some kind of external stimulus, parts of their brain light up and this kind of stuff. But there's no experience. It does everything that your brain does, but there's no internal world. It's just a robot, essentially, that's just has absolutely no internal experience. It seems possible to imagine such a being. So it seems like a complete mystery to philosophers why it is that you've got all this brain stuff going on. You've got electrochemical signals firing in this mushy thing in a skull, but that could have just existed. But it comes alongside with this thing called experience, which like a table doesn't have. It's nothing it's like to be a table, but there's something it's like to be us. And that is extremely strange.
I think, but like, do plants, do they feel like pain and stuff? Do they?
Well, we don't know. We don't know, right? But it seems intuitively most people want to say
Venus
no.
flytraps.
It doesn't seem like they feel pain, right? And one of the reasons why it seems like they don't feel pain is because when we know something's in pain, because I can know when you're in pain, I can know when an animal's in pain. What we can do is we can look at what they've got in common. Well, what's similar between if I, you know, pinch my finger and it really hurts, and I pinch your finger and it really hurts, you know, what is the same about those two experiences? Well,
ow.
Yeah, there's a reaction. It's true. So that's how I know you're in pain.
What?
But when I'm looking for like, well, how do I know that that's not just someone shouting? Well, I also know that when I do this, if I scan my brain, there's a particular part of my brain which is correlated with the experience. So when I have the experience, there's a part of the brain that also lights up at the same time. And so when I look at you and I see that in you, your experience also lines up with this brain activity.
Yeah.
We've got some information there, right? And so we could look at an animal and we could say, well, if I cause it pain, if it's got the same part of the brain that we do and it also lights up, we can say, it probably feels pain. But then you look at a plant, which doesn't have a central nervous system, it doesn't have a brain, it lacks the thing which is always correlated with pain in humans. So we say it probably doesn't feel pain. Now, that's not enough to say that it definitely doesn't feel pain. We don't know that.
Yeah.
But it
seems more likely.
It gives us good reason to doubt it.
I want to revisit the what was it, the philosophical zombie you said? Have I got that right? I find it's an interest, like conceptually it's very interesting, right? Like as you say, like there's no experience, but it's the same. I think what I find, like, or, you know, there's the neurons, it's all firing, it's all acting the same way. I think what I find difficult about it is it's like, how do you know there's no experience? It's like, you know that exact idea of like, how do I know that you're not that? How do I know that you're not that?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like I'm imagining that concept.
Like the Truman Show.
Be like the Truman Show, but everyone's literally a robot.
Yeah, kind of.
But there's no inner world for anyone else. It could just be you. And you're quite right. You can't know this. And so there are sort of different ways of thinking about this, right? Because some people say, well, if I imagine the philosophical zombie, I just think it would be conscious. Because if it has the same brain chemistry, then that's just what consciousness is. And it's kind of up to you to if you can imagine such a being that just doesn't have experience, you take the experiential part and just switch that off, and you leave everything else the same. If you can imagine that, then in your mind, you can separate out the concepts of consciousness and brain activity. But if you're someone who thinks, no, those are just the same thing, then you might think that like this philosophical zombie would just be conscious.
I find it difficult to battle with because, like, I think on the one hand, again, this is part of your video with the panpsychism stuff. You know, what exactly is the conscious bit, right? Because there's a lot of the brain, and I'm not conscious of all of it. Like, I'm conscious of some of what is going on in my brain, right? And I think what I find interesting is it does seem that consciousness is simply the awareness of experience, right? Like, and like, you know, a blind person's still conscious, but they don't have the experience of sight. So it's not the experiences they're having, it's simply that awareness there. And at that point, then I can sort of see a world where you just remove that bit and all of a sudden the things still go on. But like, then I think, do they? If no one is there to experience, it's like if a tree falls in the woods sort of argument. It's like if no one's there to actually experience these stimuli.
If you take away all the five senses, but you leave a conscious.
No.
No, okay, no.
Like actively, they can still be there. It's more, if nothing's there to actually experience the things you're talking about, the neurons firing and stuff, is that not an essential part of the system? If that disappears, can it still function?
You just said someone to experience the neurons firing. As if you've got the neurons firing, and that's a thing, which you need somebody to be there to experience. But if you're a materialist, if you think that there's just the brain, it's not that you experience the neurons firing.
I know what you're saying,
It's that the neurons firing just is the experience.
Yeah.
So it does feel like all you would have is just the experience itself. And also, when you say like you can imagine somebody who's conscious, but you take away their eyesight and they're still conscious, that's a really helpful thought, right? Because it allows you to figure out what we're really talking about when it comes to consciousness. Because there are things that we're consciously aware of, like colors and sounds and stuff. But those aren't what consciousness is. Those are just some of the things that we're consciously aware of. So yeah, switch off your eyesight and are you still conscious? Seems like it, right? Switch off your hearing, you're still conscious, right? And my favorite question to ask people at the moment is, what if I switched off your memory? And I don't mean like, you've got dementia or something and you're sort of like, oh gosh, like, where am I? Like, I don't remember getting here. I mean like the part of your brain that does memory is just gone now. Like there's no such thing as memory. In every instant, nothing gets laid down. So every single instant, it's like the first time you've ever been conscious of anything ever. But you still see, you still hear, you still got all of those receptors, but there's no memory. So every single instant, you wouldn't know that these are your hands. You wouldn't know. Like, what would that be like, do you think? Like, what kind of experience do you think that would be like? It seems really difficult to imagine, right? But it also feels much more simple and rudimentary than the kind of complex experiences we have with memory. It would just be like this sort of flash of information, just this flash of color and sound.
It's like how kids are just full of wonder and excitement.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And there's some suggestion actually that kids kind of experience the world in a slightly different way as their brains are evolving to the way that we do, to do with like the hemispheric divide. But what are we talking about then? If we're not talking about things like, so for example, you said, do plants feel pain?
Because that's what like, do spiders feel pain? And like, sometimes I see a plant and it hasn't been watered for a while, it droops down. It does look sad.
But when you ask, does a plant feel pain? I think that's a little bit like asking, well, does a bat see? I think bats actually can see. But imagine they're blind, right? Like, and you say, oh, but can bats see? And you'd be like, well, no, they can't. But that doesn't mean they're not conscious. In the same way, you could say like, just because something doesn't feel pain doesn't mean it's not conscious, because those don't have to be the same thing. You can imagine something which is conscious but doesn't feel pleasure and pain. It just has awareness. Imagine that you just experience the color blue, like just infinitely for the rest of time. You're experiencing this thing called the color blue, but there's no pleasure, there's no pain, there's no boredom, there's no happiness, there's none of that. It's just this experience. That would still seem to count as a kind of consciousness, but it wouldn't come along with pleasure and pain. So, the reason why when people talk about consciousness extending beyond brains, essentially, it sounds so crazy, is because people are wrapped up in the idea that what consciousness is like some of the complex things that consciousness does. Like seeing, like pain, like memory, like emotion, that kind of stuff. And those things aren't consciousness. Those are just some of the things that consciousness does. So what is consciousness itself? In my view, it's something really, when you strip away everything else, you're left with something really simple, just experience, really simple. And that is the kind of simple thing that could be a foundational property of the universe.
We were going to get to this later, but we're here, so I'm going to ask now. I like this idea a lot, because I think up until this point, I think I get it. It seems to fit into how I experience the world. And it just works. I get it. The thing where I find it really difficult is if it's a fundamental, in the way that sort of matter is a fundamental, right? It's like I'm made up of a certain amount of matter, but defining exactly where that begins and ends is quite difficult, right? Because all the atoms within me are held together by his forces. When I touch this, they're also experiencing forces, and those forces are different. But it's like, on a material level, what I am is actually kind of a little rudimentary, because like, at a certain point, the atoms that make me up were part of distant stars, whatever, whatever. With consciousness, what I am seems so individual and separate from you or him.
That's right.
And I think that's why the fundamentality thing really confuses me, because the only reason I can feel my finger is because it's connected to my brain where my conscious experience appears to be happening. It seems that that's where it is. But, if consciousness is a fundamental thing and everything has a degree of it, I am singular quite clearly through my experience.
I get what you're saying, right?
Do you get where I'm coming from?
This view that consciousness is sort of foundational to the makeup of the universe, and it's sort of in a very rudimentary form is present kind of everywhere. Even in like this table, the table isn't conscious, but it's made out of fundamental stuff that has this rudimentary conscious stuff, which when put together in the right way can
Could have
become
an
a complex sort of experience. And there's this question of like, well, okay, like fine, but then how do we account for the unified, individualized experience of each of us? There are three people sat in front of these cameras, and we all have individual centers of consciousness. How do we get those individual centers of consciousness? I would say a couple of things.
Okay.
Firstly, even if you don't think consciousness is foundational, if you think that, no, there's just matter at the basis, and if you put it together in a complex way, you kind of get consciousness, you still kind of have this mystery. It's like, well, if everything's just made up of matter, and matter is just everywhere in the universe, why is it that you get you and you and you? Why isn't it that like matter just arranges itself such that there's one big complex brain and we all experience things? And why are there individual like centers of consciousness, even if consciousness is not foundational? It seems weird. The second question I would ask is, are you sure that you are a unified conscious agent? And thirdly, are you sure that we are distinct conscious agents?
I know, and this is, it's like...
So those two get complicated.
What's a unified conscious agent?
So you feel as though you are unified, like your consciousness is like one thing, right? You don't feel like you've got 15 different conscious parts that are all working together and you're kind of all of them and they're all separated out. In the same way that you feel like you've got two hands or two legs, and you can wiggle your fingers. It feels like your consciousness is just like one thing. There's just this central you that exists. But like, why do we think that? Why do we think that? Well, because we experience it as unified. Okay. For a long time, for thousands of years, Eastern religious traditions in particular have denied the existence of the self. They think that the self is an illusion. You might have heard this, right? Also, if you take a big enough acid trip, you do psychedelic drugs, people report this thing called the ego death, which is where the sense of self disappears. But it's weird, right? Because what happens is consciousness doesn't go away, but your sense of being a unified ego,
your identity,
seems to go away. But you're still conscious. It just starts to. That's why people who take these drugs sort of say, like, I feel like I'm sort of one with everything. I feel like I'm like unified with.
Wait, what does that mean?
It's impossible to say without experiencing it. Have you? I've not experienced an ego death.
Okay,
but I've taken psychedelic drugs, and it's like trying to explain blue to a person who was born blind. Sure. You can't do it, right? It's something that has to be experienced. But it's interesting that like this idea crops up in a few different places, right? The person taking LSD, but also the
was it a big moment for
Buddhist
you
monk? Yeah, I mean, huge. I think psychedelic experiences are often ranked by people as the most significant events in their life, up there with the birth of their children, because it can be an incredibly revelatory experience. But, they talk about this self sort of dissipating. And so it's very difficult for us to understand what that might mean. But here are some ways that might get you thinking about it, right? The reason why you think that you are separate from me in terms of your conscious sense, right? Yeah. Might be because, I have thoughts that are inaccessible to you, and you have thoughts that are inaccessible to me, and there's this separation, okay? When you're asleep and you're dreaming, your dreaming self doesn't have access to the thoughts that you have while you're awake, right?
No, not all of them.
So, but you still think that you're the same person when you're asleep and when you're awake, even though when you're asleep, your entire sort of conscious awareness is completely like detached. It's like this big wall built up between your dream awareness and your waking awareness. For some people, they lucid dream and it's not true all the time, but
a bit of separation,
for a lot of people, when you're in a dream, you don't even know that you're in a dream. You don't remember like, oh, I was just in bed a minute ago and now here I am. You'd start freaking out. You'd be like, whoa, this is so weird. Like I just suddenly, you completely forget about it. Like that sort of
you got no memory.
Is completely inaccessible. Yeah, you switch off something like memory, or at least that kind of memory, and you feel like there's this, you experience this separation, but it's a separation that's not really there. But I think a better way of thinking about this is to focus in on the unity of experience. So suppose that we're all like made out of foundational consciousness. The consciousness is really simple and foundational, and we're all made up of it. The question is, why is it that when I put all those little bits together, I get this one unified thing, right? Yeah. There's some really good evidence to suggest that that's not actually what happens.
Interesting.
And it's to do with the fact that your brain is split into two hemispheres. You know this? If you look at a brain, it's got two hemispheres.
Left brain and
right brain, right? Yep. And famously, the left brain and the right brain are responsible for different things. So the left side of your brain governs the right visual field and the right side of your body, right? So if you show something just to the right-hand side of your visual field, if you show something just to your right-hand side, it's only your left brain that sees it. And vice versa. You know, the right brain controls the left sort of side of the body. But also, the left brain is associated with speech and language. So the words that we're using right now, that's all governed by the left-hand side of your brain. And
does that mean if someone was blind in one eye, like they'd take more from their right brain through their left eye?
Well, what happens is our brains, our two hemispheres communicate with each other, right? So yes, they would. They'd take in, if they're blind in your left eye, and I think you can still get, it's the right visual field. So you kind of need like the right-hand side of your eye. It's not quite as simple as your right eye and your left eye, but the right sort of side of your vision. But yeah, if you're blind in this eye, you'll get information going into the left-hand side of the brain, but then they'll just communicate. That's the brain does this wonderful thing of sharing the information that it needs, and that's what gives you this unified experience. But there are some people who, and by the way, the right hemisphere of the brain is also associated with like feeling. It's traditionally associated with like artistic, it's like creativity, that kind of stuff. And so our brains, our two hemispheres are connected by a bit of tissue called the corpus callosum. So a little bit of tissue that connects the two and helps them to sort of, get by with each other. But some people, in some circumstances, have had that connective tissue severed. It used to be a treatment for
seizures,
extreme, epileptic cases, to stop seizures. If in like an emergency, one of the only things that could be tried was to sever this connection. So these people, they're called split brain patients, because this normal connective tissue isn't there anymore. And they've kind of got these two independent hemispheres. So then what you're saying is true. When they see something just in the right eye, it's just their left brain that sees it, and vice versa. So we can run experiments on these people. And if you met somebody like this, you wouldn't know it. They're perfectly cogent, they'll talk to you, everything's normal in their life. But under some circumstances, some really weird stuff happens, right? So you take one of these split brain patients, sit them down in a chair, and show them, and make them stare at a screen with a dot. You can watch this on YouTube, by the way. They're staring at a screen with a dot, and then you can flash a word on either the left side or the right side. And so you'll feed it to their left visual field or their right visual field, right? Remember, the left hemisphere does speech and language, right? So if I flash the word, orange on the right-hand side of the screen, the person goes, orange. You flash the word cowboy, go cowboy. House, cool. Because their left hemisphere is seeing it. Flash a word on the right-hand side on the left-hand side of the screen. Flash the word, laptop. And they'll say, I didn't see it. I missed it. No, I didn't get that one. I don't know what it said. Okay. Then the experimenter hands them a pen in their left hand. Says, now just close your eyes and let your hand move. And they draw a laptop.
Wow.
So they didn't know that they couldn't say, they would say to you, I didn't see anything, I don't know what the word is, I have no idea, because that's their language, that's what they're telling you. But their right brain saw it, and their right brain is associated with the left arm and with, more creative function.
Mad.
So you give them a pencil and they'll start drawing it. So it's as if
they must be winking.
You've got these like two brains.
Or a pirate.
Yeah. The saddest thing in my life is that I'll never get to experience what it's like to be a split brain patient, because
that's the saddest thing in your life.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's my worst moment of the week. I think that these split brain patients are quite rare, but they demonstrate something really interesting, which is that it seems like you've kind of got these two centers of not just two brain activities, but two centers of consciousness, because the right hemisphere was aware of what it saw. And the left hemisphere was, and the left hemisphere was not. So here's where something gets extremely weird, right? Take one of these split brain patients, and they're in an experiment, so they know they're waiting for instructions, and you show just their right brain, so left visual field. You show them an instruction, and the instruction says, "Get up and walk over there." So they see the instruction, they stand up, and they walk over there, and then you ask them, "Why did you just do that? Why did you just get up and walk over to the wall?" And you know what they say? It'd be weird enough if they said, "I don't know." Right? Wouldn't that be weird? If like their right brain got up and walked over when you asked and they said, "I don't know, I don't remember any instruction." But they don't say, "I don't know." they make something up.
Ah.
And the weirdest thing about this is that they believe it. They say something like, "Oh, I was just going to go and get some water. Or, it was a bit warm in here. I was just going to go and open the window, if you don't mind." And they believe it.
Wow.
Even though we know that's not why they actually got up, right? We know that's not why they did it. They believe it.
Well, with anything, you do like clap your hands.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah. And of course, because they're in experimental conditions, they're doing what they're told, right? So they know like, oh, if it says clap. So you couldn't just say like, go and kill someone. Their right brain would probably go like, no, thanks. But they wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Yeah.
Right? But they probably wouldn't do it. But if you know you're in an experiment and an experimenter says, can you just clap your hands? You're going to clap your hands. But the weird thing about this is that it seems like the right brain just is getting this person to do something, and then the left brain just like comes up with some kind of rationalization.
Yeah.
So this isn't a split brain patient, but the idea is that this happens in healthy brains too. It's just that you can't experimentally prove it. So connect those brain hemispheres again, and what's going on? Well, when you do things, you think, well, no, I know why I did that. I acted on this reason, and that's why I did that. But really, you were just sort of vibing it out. Your right brain governs your activity and certain kinds of activities and motions and things that you do, and you just do them. And then the left hemisphere, retrospectively, comes up with the reason why you did it. But you experience that as a unity. So what I mean to say is that when you say, I'm one unified, conscious agent, like it might seem that way, but your brain isn't acting in that way.
Can I ask you some questions about you?
You certainly can.
Thank you.
About the right side or the left side? Which one do you want?
Just because that's a lot to take in.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, and maybe too much. Maybe, I think, when you throw everything at the wall, you throw the consciousness stuff and the panpsychist stuff and all this, it's all a bit much. But I think at the very least, this is something really interesting to reflect on. Your brain is split into two, and there are two centers of consciousness. Have you ever heard of alien hand syndrome?
No.
Yeah.
Where like the first time we started thinking about this kind of stuff in the 1800s or maybe the 1900s, there was a report of a woman whose left hand was trying to kill her. It started like trying to choke her and kill her, and she had to use her other arm to like pull it away.
Gosh.
And in a few cases, there have been people who have this so-called alien hand syndrome, where their right hand will pour themselves a cup of coffee and their left hand will just pour it right out again. Their right hand will put their trousers on, their left hand will take it off again. Right? Their hands are acting differently, and where does alien hand syndrome show up most? In people who've had the corpus callosotomy.
Yeah.
As if to say you really have two different brains.
You got to look after that corpus.
You really do. Yeah, watch the back of your head.
All right, just because I'm conscious
yes,
of time.
Please do. Very good.
That was good. Well
did you
done.
like that?
Very good.
That was Jack wrote that.
Oh, I did write that joke. But we did the whole thing early, so I forgot.
Do you never, like, do you get tired of debating and like thinking of that level of sort of frequency? Because I personally, like, I'm with you two, but I feel like I'm sprinting and giving you all the concentration I've got to catch up with you. Do you find that hard? Because I do.
Sometimes, but not. So I get bored of debating, because debating it can be fun. It's like jousting. I always compare it to like a boxing match.
Yeah.
If you have a debate, it's fun. There's nothing wrong with a bit of theatre. There's nothing wrong with a boxing match. But there are two things to note with boxing. Firstly, it tires you out, and it's essentially a showcase. Secondly, it doesn't actually tell you who the better fighter is. It just tells you who the better boxer is.
It also tells you who the better boxer is on the day.
Exactly.
Like there's so many conditions.
Exactly. In the same way, you have a debate, you might find out who's the better debater, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to find out who's actually right.
Yeah.
So it's fun, but I do get tired of that, and I couldn't do that all the time.
Is your brain always whirring?
But yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But
do you struggle to turn it off? Because
not exactly, because the thing is, I understand what you mean, which is like when you say you feel like you're sprinting, because it takes a lot of mental energy to think about such like. And there are a lot of things to keep track of. I'm talking about the brain and the left side and the right side and then the experiment. There's lots to keep track of. And so the first time I'm learning about this kind of stuff, I'll learn something like that one, which is why I say I've got to be careful here, because I'm throwing it all at you, right? But when I first hear about the split brain patients, right, I hear about that and I just shut the book, right? I just sort of turn it and I'm like, whoa, okay, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard, like possibly in my entire life. And I just need to think about that for some time. And so if it were constantly new info, because sometimes people say like, gosh, you think about this all the time. Like this is so intense, does it get tiring? And it's like, well, it would do if it was constantly like input.
Sure.
If it was new stuff all the time, it'd be too much, But because this is stuff I've been talking about for a long time, it's like talking about your job or your hobby or whatever it is. You can just keep going forever.
And when you're exploring these, such topics that's so big and so not necessarily far from reach, but such huge things to get your head round. At least I find that way, certainly myself. Like, how do you sort of stay grounded within that, like as a person yourself?
Well,
like what do you do to wind down and stuff?
yeah, I mean, it's important, right? Because I think it's always bad when someone gets too wrapped up.
Is that a danger? Because I can find just in the things I get obsessed about, I can fall too far in them. Then it's been 2 days and I'm like, fuck, I haven't, had a pint with my mates. I've just been sat thinking about this one thing.
That's true. So I think having a pint with your mates is a great way to do that. Having friends although, let's not encourage people to drink alcohol because it's bad, but
Lost him.
No, you're right. I did do an episode with David Nutt, who used to be the chief advisor to the government on drug policy, and he's got a lot to say about alcohol. He ended up getting fired for saying that taking MDMA is safer than riding a horse, which was, he's an interesting guy, but yeah,
Sure.
But I don't take his advice when it comes to drinking. So I do drink, a lot. I drink with friends, and sometimes, we do meet up and we talk about philosophy and we talk about it. But like, no one ever gets tired of talking exactly. You might get tired of a particular area. So even if we meet up and we start talking about like, I'm really interested in religious history in the New Testament, and we're having like a very in-depth conversation about Jesus.
Is that not full on for you? Because for me, that's a bit full on.
It is. But I suppose to wind down, if I'm really not feeling it, then I'll play Warzone. Play a lot of Warzone.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just Warzone.
Actually, it's so funny. I play Warzone all the time with one of my good friends, and we're constantly like when we meet, because we're both interested in like New Testament. We'll sit and play Warzone, and we'll talk about, and it's like, because when you're on like Resurgence like quads and you have like, you can turn party chat on, right? So like the other guys in your party can hear you. We'll play, and we'll just be talking about like mark and priority in the Gospels or something, or he'll just sort of be like, I heard this really good argument today that John chapter 21 is actually a
Mate,
an interpolation, and these guys are probably thinking, who are these losers? But yeah, so we do. I thought it would make for quite a good stream actually, to just sit and play.
Would be good. 12-year-old who hasn't figured out how to turn off voice chat, who's on his PS4, is like, how do I turn off?
We just talked about death, and it's. But I play a lot of Warzone. I do things that can be kind of like, I play music as well. I very much enjoy doing music.
We heard about this.
I'll do that too. But
a big piano.
I really, awesome, right? And it helps you to wind down and whatnot. But like, I mean, the only other thing, I just go to sleep. I go to sleep and then I wake up and I'm roaring to go again. Like,
do you like not get knackered though, talking about it all day?
Only to the extent that like
full on, innit? Or is it just not full on for you?
But like, how often do you, I don't know, but like, how often are you making YouTube videos and podcasts, and how often are you filming?
Once a week.
Okay, so you film anything like once a week, roughly?
A podcast.
We do the podcast.
He films more
I
than
film
me.
more.
But I do like stand-up.
He's like semi-retired.
Okay.
Well, no, I do like stand-up comedy.
Well, what do you? Yeah, well, I mean, what do you do like every day? If you have like a day off, what do you do?
To be fair, yesterday I did just write all day, but that was only because I was feeling inspired.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like everybody has like off days where like you'll wake up late and you'll sit in bed and you'll scroll on social media for like until like 8 p.m. and you'd be like, that's a complete waste of time. Yeah. I do that, like
you have those off days.
Yeah, of course. Everybody.
You Instagram Reels.
Everybody does. Yeah.
I love the Instagram Reels.
Everybody's doing that, right? Everyone does, and I sometimes think that's, if you need recharging, that's just what you do. You end up doing that. But it just is, because also there are so many different areas of philosophy. Like if I get bored of talking about God, then I start talking about consciousness. And if I get bored of consciousness, then I start talking about ethics. And if I get bored of it, and it just never ends.
Where do you think interests come from? Because for me, I'm like that, but with Bruce's different albums. Like, where does that?
There it is. I knew it was going to happen.
But where does that come from? Like, do you? Because that's just what you're into.
I don't know. I think. Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Do you think you can control that, or do you think you're just into what you're into?
I think you can to the extent that you can control anything, because there may be no free will. That's a topic we didn't talk about.
What? But we got a Patreon comment. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, great. Because free, there may be no free will. You might not be in control of your actions.
No, I like Bruce
at all. But did you choose to like Bruce?
My dad showed me Born to Run, and I love it.
But you didn't make him do that, did you? You just
no.
And you didn't choose to love it.
No, we're not even going high level here.
I heard it, and then I loved it.
Yeah, but did you choose to love it, or did you just love it?
I just loved it,
right?
Because he chose to make it great.
So it was his free will. but not yours. So you are beholden to the conscious whimsy of Bruce Springsteen.
Why are you trying to ruin Bruce for?
I'm not. That gives him way much more credit, I think, if he's in control of your psychological dispositions.
I think you can always justify the reason you like things, or almost always. If you sit and think about it long enough, I think you can pick a reason.
Yeah, but
I
you
don't
know
think
what?
you choose it though.
That's your left brain. That's your left brain just retroactively just coming up with reasons why you like something. It's like, oh yeah, I like Bruce Springsteen because like I really like his sort of melodic. It's like, really. Is that really why? Oh yeah, I really like. He gets very sort of experimental with the Moog synth. It's like really that's when you listen to the song, you thought to yourself, no, you just listened to it and you liked it. And then you tried to work out afterwards why you liked it.
You make a good point.
All
frustrating me.
Big picture thoughts you have about left brain and right brain and all that. Does this help in your day to day? Like me and Jack, we get anxious a lot. Does this help you just not be? Are you like, it's just my left brain?
In a way, it kind of does.
Or does knowing more make it harder?
For a start, it means that I'm suspicious of my own reasoning because sometimes, right, when I act impulsively, I'm angry or I'm frustrated or something, and I act in a particular way. I want to act in a particular way, and I think to myself, no, like I'm sure of this. I've reasoned it out, and it reminds me that my own brain can play tricks on me. But it also reminds me that other people are doing the same thing. When somebody says, if I'm having an argument with someone or someone's upset or something, and they say like, this is why I'm upset, this is what happened, this is why I don't like what you've done, I can just be aware of the fact that there might be more beneath the surface. It's like the C.S. Lewis writes about this, like when, he writes this book about a demon who's trying to convince a Christian to become an atheist. And he's trying to like, here are some ways to like ruin his life. And one of the ways to ruin his life is like, when he comes home, make him have an argument with his wife, but make him think that it's about the dishes. So like he comes home and it's sort of like, you didn't do the dishes today, honey. And it's like, oh gosh, well, I had such a long day at work and now I come back and you want me to do the dishes. Like, no, it's not a big thing to ask. I just want you to, well, yeah, but you're always, and they're having this huge argument. It's not about the dishes. It's not about the dishes. It's about something much more foundational and much more like important that's sort of got the scab wound that gets opened with the dishes thing, and it's like an excuse that someone uses. So you think you're arguing about one thing, but really there's something more going on. So if you're talking to a friend and he's like, it just really annoys me that you're always late to things or whatever, and you can remember that a lot of the time, even if they genuinely think that's the only reason they're upset, there's like more going on, and you might need to address the foundation of that relationship. But day to day, I don't know. Maybe
it's not taking into it.
Maybe when when my friend decides to push prison roof and says that he did it because he thought it would get us circle, and I'm like, yeah, okay, right. You might think that's why he did it, but you just thought it'd be fun to go up the zip wire,
Some Warzone references.
Okay.
Do we play Warzone? I think I played Warzone one time.
I'm more of a PUBG. Did you play PUBG?
No.
Do you want to play PUBG?
Why not?
I just never have. No.
I'll teach you PUBG. It's way more grounded than Warzone.
You think?
Oh yeah, it's a slower pace. It's better.
It's slower pace.
It's fucking. You really have to get immersed in
the fire. You can
have some great theological chats.
You can hot drop. You can hot drop if you want, mate.
Hey,
if you want to hot drop, mate, you can.
Okay,
but if you want, we can drop. Have a slow get. I genuinely would love to play PUBG with you.
I think that'd be fun. We should do a stream or something. That'd be great. You can teach me how to do it.
Excellent.
Or we can just do it in private. It's not all for the content.
Just do it in private.
That's the other thing, though. By the way, don't do it all for the content. Like
true.
The thinking.
I'd rather just play in private.
Yeah, it can be exhausting to constantly like. I found there's a period in my life, and it still exists now to some degree, but I try to turn it down. Where like if I'm reading an interesting book, the thought is, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I can get this guy on my show. Oh, this is interesting. I can use this or I could put this into my writing, or I can make And I've really been trying to stop doing that.
And how much do you think you're in control of that? Because something I've really been exploring and reading lots about is sort of, as I've been trying to pursue something a bit more artistic with like stand-up or not even artistic, but like less immediately commercial.
Yeah.
I've been exploring sort of the effect social media's had on me since I've been, like 14, really consistently on it. And I found that a lot of those effects now, although I'm like sort of cognitively or like aware of, they're kind of out of my control, and it's kind of like battling against that. How much do you think you're in your sort of own control of your own head?
I don't think we're in control of anything that happens in our heads. I think that like events just occur. I don't think that you could get to control essentially anything you do. This is it like philosophers have debated.
Other people can control it.
like, yes, but they're not controlling it like themselves. Like, there are external influences. Like, you could make me do something, but I don't think you chose to make me do it, right? And like, I think that there's just this series of causes that no one is ultimately in control of.
Every action has its equal opposite reaction, Hamilton.
That is Isaac. Well, yeah, it's well, was it
right? Well, on that note, should we go to the Patreon?
I think we shouldn't. I think it was Emerson.
Oh yeah, the worm.
We've got one big last question for you. We ask every single guest. How's the worm doing, Alex O'Connor? Could you check on our worm for us? See how he's doing. He might be hard to find. He often is. But if you could, maybe you could.
Where is he?
Speak on the ethics of keeping him.
I don't know. I want to see if he looks conscious. Where is? There's like an actual worm in here.
Yeah, there he is. You can just about make him out there.
Oh, he's tiny.
He's very small.
Oh, how sweet.
There's usually several, to be fair. But
can I say, Alex? By the way, this is awesome. This is fucking awesome.
I hope so, because
you're sick, man.
It's also,
let's play PUBG.
It's very. I'd like that. It's very difficult to know.
This is fascinating.
Like how, because a lot of this stuff goes deep as well. Like some of this consciousness stuff, it gets deep and it also gets complicated and weird. And it's always difficult to know sort of what sort of level to go to in a conversation with someone for the first time. I would just say that if anyone's listening to this and is like, okay, that brain stuff was really interesting, but you use the word panpsychism now 3 times. Like what's that? And consciousness fact, like what's going, like, you can just ignore that. But if you think it's interesting, if you think it's cool, there's lots of like material out there to chase these thoughts. But I think it's just worth thinking about. And the split brain stuff is interesting. The main thing I'd want to get across to people is that consciousness is a mystery. Have you ever heard of Mary's room, the thought experiment?
No.
So like imagine Mary lives in a room. I'm still holding the worm. Yeah. Mary, he's moving. Mary is sat in a.
Is he choosing?
I don't think so. At least no more than you or I. But it is interesting to think about what's the brain activity of this little worm. Like, what do you think it's like to be a worm?
Muddy.
Well, maybe, but the thing is it? Like, Thomas Nagel wrote a famous essay in the 1970s called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" And it's a really wonderful. It's one of my favorite essays. It's quite short as well. And
I can take this back.
The point, sure, yeah, you can take. Has he got a name?
No, actually, the reason being is occasionally they die or we have to replace them.
You should call him Thomas Nagel after the guy that.
All right, it can be Thomas Nagel for
Thomas
a while.
Nagel, the worm,
until this one dies.
Because Thomas Nagel asks what's it like to be a bat, and he writes this essay, which is a wonderful essay, quite short, where he's trying to get to grips with what consciousness is. And he's like, if you're thinking about what it's like to be a bat, he doesn't mean, you could imagine hanging upside down and flying around, but that's not what it's like to be a bat. That's what it's like for you to act like a bat.
Yeah.
What is it like to experience the world as a bat?
I just couldn't tell you, Alex.
But that's the point. You couldn't, right? And it seems like, and he in this essay argues that consciousness is something which is irreducible to scientific explanation. You cannot capture what it is like to be a thing in scientific explanation. And the way to explain that, perhaps in closing, because I'm also conscious of time, is to think about Mary in her room. And she's born and she grows up in this room, which is black and white. There's no color in this room whatsoever, And she gets given every single bit of information that could possibly ever be written down about the color blue. I don't mean all the information we have right now. I mean everything you could ever have, right? So all the science, she understands the science of the eye. She understands electromagnetic radiation. She understands the brain chemistry. She understands which neurons are firing and when. She understands all of that. Everything that you could put onto a bit of paper and write down, diagrams, all that kind of stuff about blue. She knows it. Then she opens the door. She walks outside. She looks up and she sees blue in the sky. And the question is, has she learned something new? What do you think? Has she learned something new by experiencing blue?
Oh, I would assume so. The experience, I don't think experience can be explained without reference to other experience. And I think when you take an experience so fundamental, like seeing a color, I just don't think you can explain that.
And most people know that. Most people know that it's impossible to explain what blue is to a blind person, and that Mary would learn something new by stepping outside, and they'll happily say, yeah, totally. But they oftentimes don't recognize how revolutionary or how sort of important a thought that is, because what does that mean? It means that the conscious experience part of blueness, the blueness of blue, or the pain of pain, or the sound of a drum, or whatever, the experiential part is something which, in principle, we cannot explain in words. We cannot explain with a scientific diagram or reference to waves and eyes and brain chemistry. Like, it does not matter what you write down, in what way, or what science you discover. there is something about the experience of consciousness that cannot be reduced to that. And that means that it's a question that literally sits outside of the possibility of scientific explanation. It's something which science cannot explain.
And with that,
I was
Oh, you go on. I was
thinking quite deeply when you began asking that question about what it would be like to get a pint with you, and if it's too early on a Saturday to go on a pint after this.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, as they say.
Yeah, but then we made eye contact, and then you were asking me, and then that is the honesty of why I sent it over to Jack.
You can talk about what it's like to drink a pint,
but we'll never.
But we'll never be able to give someone the experience who hasn't had it. Guys, we have a Patreon at $7. You can join us over there. We have plenty of questions left for Alex. We haven't even touched on theology, really, which is a big thing for you. Obviously, you speak about it a lot. I think a lot of
maybe too much. Yes.
Your most popular moments are speaking on religion. So I want to dig into that a little bit, and we have plenty more. So come and join us over on the Patreon.